Countries are grappling with how to use and protect the vital resources that lie beneath our oceans. Talks on how to regulate deep-sea mining are taking place in Jamaica as companies line up to extract the kind of metals which are needed for the world's green revolution. Some areas of the seabed are rich with minerals and metals like nickel, cobalt and copper. Such metals and minerals are vital in making low-carbon technologies such as EV batteries, solar panels and wind turbines. Land deposits are being drained, but seabed reserves could be several times higher than all the land-based reserves combined. But deep-sea mining is deeply divisive. Some big companies have vowed not to buy metals produced by deep-sea mining. They're among the first businesses to support a call by the World Wildlife Fund for it to be halted, while the environmental consequences are assessed. And while some argue those underwater resources could power the world for decades to come, others say there's little point developing the technology to exploit them, when others are developing new kinds of EV batteries and battery recycling. For example, Chinese battery maker CATL makes a sodium-ion battery for EVs, using material that's cheaper and more widely available than the lithium used in traditional batteries. This year, Chinese EV maker Chery has become the first automaker to use them in their vehicles. Well, Matthew Gianni is co-founder and political and policy advisor at Deep Sea Conservation Coalition.
Scientists have consistently and increasingly said that there is risk of widespread and irreversible loss of species and ecosystems in the deep sea if the mining goes ahead. For example, on the question of recovery, scientists have said that in the area where the greatest commercial interest currently lies, which is in the Eastern Pacific, mining for so-called manganese nodules, that the species that depend on these nodules, that live off these nodules, may take millions of years to recover, and even the species living in the sediment areas surrounding these nodules may take hundreds to thousands of years to recover. So there's an increasing call for pausing the whole process until more scientific information is available and informed decisions or judgments can be made on what the potential impacts of seabed mining would be, given the warnings that they may be irreversible, and whether they could be managed, the mining could be managed to prevent these sorts of impacts.
We're talking, though, aren't we, about metals and minerals that could be vital to our green transition. Some analysts say it's vital we access those stores under the sea in order to help us through that green transition. Do they have a point?
I don't think so. It's a misleading argument. And it's a false choice between mining on land and mining at sea. And we're not the only ones saying this. There was a recent report by the European Academies of Science Advisory Council, which basically said the idea that terrestrial mining, that deep seabed mining is better than mining on land for these metals, or that the world needs these metals from the deep sea to transition to green economies, is a misleading argument, and in many respects it's greenwash. The reality is, I mean, just in China alone, you have the world's largest automobile manufacturer selling BYD, Build Your Dreams, selling the largest electric vehicle manufacturer, I meant to say, selling automobiles, all of its automobiles with lithium iron phosphate batteries. So no cobalt, no nickel, none of the metals that would be mined in the deep sea. And the mining industry, the seabed mining industry, is banking on the electric vehicle market and the increasing commitments to transition from fossil fuel to electric vehicles to sell cobalt and nickel, which would be mined in the deep ocean areas. But we're seeing the EV market moving away from high-cost metals such as cobalt and nickel and replacing them with low-cost, much more abundant, and as it turns out, safer materials, in this case, lithium iron phosphate batteries. The world is facing a global climate crisis. And what people may not realize is that the oceans absorb 90% of the excess heat we've been putting into the atmosphere as a result of greenhouse gas emissions, but also absorbing about 25% of the CO2, the excess carbon dioxide emissions that we've put into the atmosphere since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. We need the ocean to continue to act as a natural carbon sink and heat absorber. The world would be much harder today, and these heat waves would be both longer and more severe if the oceans weren't providing us a buffer against the warming that we're causing by CO2 emissions. And that's another big concern about deep seabed mining. It may interfere with the ocean's so-called biological carbon pump, which draws carbon down out of the atmosphere and sequesters it into the deep sea sediments in areas where mining could or would occur.